So we are about halfway through the group stage of Euro 2020. Raf Diallo here. We just finished watching the Dutch beat Austria, and earlier Belgium came from behind against Denmark in what was an emotionally charged game. And of course, North Macedonia had been knocked out too. They were playing Ukraine in the early game. Didi Hamann is here, part of the RTE soccer panel. And first off, if we just start with the game we've just watched, the Dutch making it 2 wins from 2 against Austria. How impressed are you with them?
Yeah, I think they've done really well so far. I don't think they were really fancy before the start of the tournament, but they obviously conceded 2 goals against Ukraine, found a winner towards the end. And the Austrians are tough not to crack. They are defensively very solid. One of my dark horses, I've got to say, Austria, and they beat them fair and square. They were by far the better side. Scored 2 goals, probably should have had more. So, very impressed by the Dutch so far.
Yeah, and in the earlier game, of course, in Group B, so it was emotionally charged for obvious reasons with everything that happened with Christian Eriksen. The Danish, the way they started the game in terms of the way they pressed, the pressure they put on. I guess with the circumstances, you must have been especially even more impressed with them, with everything that's gone on and just how they started.
No, absolutely. I think they probably just ran out of steam towards the end. Having said that, they gave it a go again in the last 10 minutes to find an equalizer. But the Belgians, you've seen De Bruyne's missed the first game. He came on, changed the game. Witsel came on. He's not played for a long time. They've got a very good team, very good squad in strength and depth, and I'm sure it wasn't easy for the Danish team. I'm sure they wanted to do it for Christian Eriksen, but they've got another chance in the last game to get the 3 points, which probably, or I think it will get them through to the second or to the second phase, to the knockout stages. But yeah, we don't know how much it's been in the back of their minds. It's probably been a very hard week for the whole team, for the coach and staff, for everybody connected to the team. And I think you've got to give them huge credit to take Belgium, one of the favourites of the tournaments, to the wire.
And for Belgium as well, because we probably didn't learn that much about them against Russia, just given the performance difference between both teams. Were you even kind of more, I suppose, impressed by the way they managed to, I suppose, they weathered what Denmark threw at them at the beginning, managed to find an adjustment. Obviously, it helps if you can bring on Kevin De Bruyne, and then found a way to win. I don't know if you think it actually garlands their credentials as we go towards, or we move closer to the knockout stage.
Well, I think it's hard to come back against any side, especially in a tournament where the best 24 teams of Europe play. And, the Danes are a very capable team, as we know. And, to come back was a big effort. I think Belgium, along with Portugal and France, are the 2 or the 3 teams which I think will go very deep, or probably one of the 3 will win it. It was another step forward for them. I think they've learned a lot. I think they'll gain a lot of confidence, because every time you come from behind and turn a game round, gives you an awful lot of confidence, and I think it brings you closer together. And I think you've seen today that they have a united squad. I think in the past they've always doubt sometimes whether they mix or they gel as well as they should do. But I think today was another big step forward for the Belgian side.
And in regards to Italy, so we watched them the night before, and they were impressive again, this time against Switzerland, with a 3-0 win. The flexibility of their attack is one thing I think we've noticed. They can counter-attack, but also they can play patient possession football just with the midfield they have. As a midfielder, I'd be interested, and also given you watch Liverpool quite a lot, I'm sure, with the way what Jurgen Klopp has done there, the way they press is probably the most impressive thing, the way they win the ball back. And I wonder, how difficult is that to implement in an international team when you don't have the luxury of time with the players that, say, a club side like Liverpool or Manchester City would have?
Well, I think it's very important to have players who understand the game. And I think the Italians always been known to be masters of reading the game. And I think you've seen it in the first 2 games. In Jorginho, they've got a player there who really sets the tone and controls the pace of the game. He's got two very good players either side of him. They're just a well-oiled machine, and I think you've seen it in the Germany team. Germany played with Kroos and Gundogan. They're not defensive-minded players, so unless you have a defensive midfielder, it doesn't matter how many offensive players you've got. And you've seen that in the Champions League final with Manchester City, Gundogan played the holding role. He's not a holding midfielder. Unless you have a holding player who's really dictating the pace of the game and gives the team balance, you can have as many offensive players as you want. Things won't happen for you and you won't create chances only because you've got 5 or 6 offensive players. And I think that's one of Italy's strengths at the moment, that they've got a very solid base, top goalkeeper. And I think in Jorginho, they've got a player who's just given the 4 or 5 players around him and also the fullbacks a license to go forward and express themselves.
Yeah, and do you think there might be a slight concern? We don't know how, Giorgio Chiellini went off with an injury in the first half. We don't know the extent of it yet, but would that be a bit of a concern? They still have Bonucci, but as Damien Duff was saying in commentary, Francesco Acerbi, the Lazio centre-back who replaced Chiellini, is not quite at that same level.
Yeah, it will be a blow because I think Chiellini is a huge player, but at the same time, I think he's 36 or 37 now. And, it remains to be seen whether even, I don't think he'll play the last game because it's not really, it's a dead rubber for Italy. Of course, you play for the group win. But I think we see him in the last 16. I think he will be fit, but, there's got to be doubts whether he can play 4 games in about 12 or 14 days, which he has to if they were to go to the final. So, they've got 1 or 2 people who can cover him. Yes, he's a big influence, but at the same time, if he's not 100%, then sometimes it might be better to play somebody who is 100%. But having said that, if he's on the pitch, I think Italy is a different team. And that's why everybody in Italy is probably hoping and praying that he can play, maybe not the next game, but the game after.
And the big Friday game, of course, will be England-Scotland, I think is the one that many people are going to be watching just because of the derby element, neighbours meeting each other. I'd be curious to get your take on the English midfield, particularly Calvin Phillips. And I suppose we were talking a little bit there about Jorginho and the Italian balance that they have in midfield. What do you make of the English side of things in terms of the options they have there? Of course, Rice is the protector, and they have Mason Mount, and then Calvin Phillips is in place there because Jordan Henderson, of course, has not been fit at the start of the tournament.
Yeah, no, I think they've been playing very well in the first game, and Calvin Phillips, I think, was the best player on the pitch. He set up the deciding goal. He's done ever so well. He challenged. He won a lot of balls in the middle of the park. It was a very commanding performance. He probably outshone Declan Rice, but at the same time, the position Declan Rice plays is a position where you don't really want to be seen. This is a role where you have to do a job for the team, and I think he did that in the first game against Croatia. But I think the performance of Calvin Phillips, what it does, it gives you the option. If you have to chase the game or if you want to try something else, I think it gives you the option to maybe play Calvin Phillips a bit deeper instead of Declan Rice, move Mason Mount maybe a bit further backwards, and bring Jack Grealish into the team. And, I think it gives him a lot more options. But I've got to say, Declan Rice, he did his job. The holding role, the defensive role in midfield, is a role you don't really like to change. So I don't expect any changes for tomorrow. I think they will probably play with the same formation. And if he doesn't have to change it, I don't think he will. Maybe in the last game, if it's a dead rubber, he may make 2-3 changes. But again, when it gets into the knockout stages, I'd be very surprised if things go well tomorrow, which I think they will do. I'd be very surprised if the midfield duo is not Rice and Calvin Phillips, because they did well in the first game, and there's no reason to split them up right now.
And in defence, Harry Maguire says he's fit. Gareth Southgate has suggested he's going to be involved at some part in some part of the game. Given that he hasn't played much, he's been involved in training. Do you think it's a bit of a risk to play him from the start, from Southgate's point of view?
Well, it depends what Southgate's opinion is on Maguire and Tyrone Mings. If he wants Maguire to play in the knockout stages, I think he's got to play. If he's fit, he's got to play him for at least half an hour, 40 minutes tomorrow, and then probably start him in the last game of the group stages. But at the same time, I've got to say, Mings didn't do anything wrong. You know, he's a very physical player. It will be a physical challenge against Scotland tomorrow. So, you know, I'm not too sure. I'm a fan of Tyrone Mings, I've got to say. I think at Villa he's had a very good season. He's a very commanding player. He's good in the air. He's tough. He's quick. And Maguire did well for Manchester United. But whether he's a player who can play at the highest level and you know, be the player everybody's expecting him to be, I think remains to be seen. So I think it's a tricky one, because if a player is not fully fit, especially at the back where it's very physical, especially against Scotland, I'd be very cautious to throw him in. But I think the safe option will be to play Mings, maybe give Maguire 20 minutes or half an hour, and then, you know, decide before the last game. If it were to be a dead rubber, then maybe you can play Maguire, and then you got a decision to make for the last 16. But yeah, at the moment, I would favour Tyrone Mings, because, as I said, I think he's been very good in the first game, and there's no reason to change that.
And in terms of Harry Kane's form, because there've been some question marks. Obviously, it's just one game we're judging on against Croatia. Just a blip, do you think, or do you see some kind of lasting concern there, just as they go towards presuming they go to the knockout stage?
Well, I think we find out more tomorrow. You know, he wants to leave the club. He's been at Spurs for a number of years now. I think he made it clear when he said he wants to leave Spurs in the summer if possible. And if he doesn't perform tomorrow, I think there might be deeper lying issues, because there might be a meeting having taken place between his age, you know, his dad and Daniel Levy. He looked to me as if something was on his mind. And, you know, you can have a bad game, but I think the performance against Croatia was just too bad to be true. And, you know, even when Kane doesn't score, usually always brings something to the table. You know, he sets somebody up. His hold-up play is usually decent, though he brings other players into play. You know, he's got very quick players around him in Sterling and Foden. So that's really a formation and a team that should suit him playing in. And if he doesn't perform tomorrow, if the performance would be similar to the one he showed against Croatia, I think there might be something more deeper, because he's got a contract at Spurs. He made it clear he wants to leave now. Maybe Levy said he wants 120, 150, 200 million, whatever, you know, I don't know. And maybe in the back of his mind, he's thinking, well, I want to leave. The chairman wants so much money. If I score a couple of goals every game, you know, maybe he wants 200 or 250 or whatever. And these are all things which play on your mind. And once you lose focus, and once you've got other things on your mind, the performance will suffer. And I think that was the case in the first game. And as I said, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we read a story of something were to come up in the next few days that Levy asked for a ridiculous amount of money, which leaves a player in a conundrum, saying, well, of course he wants to win the European Championship, of course he wants to score goals, but maybe in the back of his mind he thinks, well, if I score a hat-trick every game, you know, he wants the sort of money nobody will pay. And you know, I think we should watch him very closely tomorrow and in the next game, because, as I said, I think the performance in the first game was too bad to be true.
Yeah, and just on Germany too, were you encouraged by what you saw against France?
Ish. You know, they probably played as I expected them to do. You know, I don't think they deserved a draw. They had one chance in the whole game for all the possession they had. They had one chance of Gnabry. which he put over the bar. Lloris never made a save all game. And on the other hand, France got 2 offside goals who were marginally offside. They hit the post. They hit that chance with Mbappe where Hummels made a last-ditch tackle, a brilliant tackle. So, I think France showed their class. I think I had a feeling that France always had another 1 or 2 gears if they needed to. And we just like options. You've seen the players coming on. They didn't really have a positive impact. I think he's got to bring Goretzka in because he gives us physicality in the middle of the park. And I think he has to bring Sané into the team because I think we lack pace. We badly lack pace going forward. So I hope he makes at least 2 changes against Portugal Saturday because, Portugal, I don't think is much worse than France. And it'll be a very tough game. People say, well, we did well against France. And a lot of people said, well, we were unlucky not to get a draw. No. We weren't unlucky. We deserved to lose that game. We didn't threaten their goal enough to deserve a draw. And I hope he makes 2 or 3 changes for Saturday because the way we played against France, I think we will have the same problems against Portugal. And if we play the same way, I don't think we're going to beat Portugal.
Yeah, and the pre-tournament expectations for Germany were quite low. You were part of a Germany team that reached a World Cup final in 2002 when maybe expectations were low. And how did you find yourself growing into that tournament? And is there a template there for this current German team to follow?
Well, you need to get out of the group. That's the most important thing. Obviously, a World Cup was different. We played the first game against Saudi Arabia. We beat them 8-0. Then we played Ireland. We conceded a last-minute equaliser. So we needed a result against Cameroon in the last game, which we did. You can't compare tournaments. And the most important thing is, I wouldn't give up on that German team, far from it, because the most important thing is to get out of the group. And 3 points might be enough to get out of the group. 4 points will definitely get you out of the group, I think. So if we get a draw against Portugal, I think it's in our own hands to beat Hungary in the last game and finish third, maybe even second. And once it gets to the knockout stages, it's a different ball game. It's a different tournament. So, I wouldn't give up on them, but I think we've got to improve dramatically. My worry is our squad deep enough? And as I said, in midfield, you mentioned the Italians before. A midfield of Kroos and Gundogan doesn't sit well with me. They're not defense-minded players. Gundogan's got Rodri behind him at Manchester City. He's got 14 or 15 goals this season because he's got the freedom to go forward. Toni Kroos got Casemiro behind him at Real Madrid, does all the dirty work. These guys are not defense-minded players. You can't play in international football at the highest level. You can't play without a holding midfielder. We did. I don't say we paid the price for it because we played an okay game. And I'm not sure whether there was a reason we didn't get a result. But looking ahead and looking forward, we've got to bring somebody in who can do that. I think Goretzka is a player who can do that. I would even suggest or think about bringing Kimmich back into the middle and drop Kroos and Gundogan because the engine room is where games are won. And, I think that's should be the main focus. And then you need pace up top. And Sané, he had an indifferent season for Bayern Munich, but I would bring him in because we badly lack pace up front. And, if you look at Portugal, if you look at France, if you look at Belgium, they all got it. We haven't got it. And I think this is where we have to work on.
And we'll see how all that plays out. Of course, Euro 2020, you can watch all the matches live on RT2 and RT Player and follow everything on the RTE News app as well. Didi Hamann, thanks a million for your time and enjoy the rest of the tournament.
My pleasure. Thanks, Raf.